Well, let's get started. It's 11:05. Uh, and so my name is Sujin Ko. I am the Graduate Futures Program Director at the Humanities Center. And today we will have Sarah Orem speaking presenting to us about making workshops accessible. She is a lecturer in the writing program at USC and a scholar working at the intersection of disability, gender, and performance studies. Her work has appeared in venues such as Modern Drama, Women and Performance, and the Journal of Literary and Cultural Disability Studies. She is finishing up a book manuscript that shows how a collection of 20th and 21st century American literature is recuperating women homebound by disability and chronic illness as activist figures. She was also recently a postdoctoral fellow, the Sawyer Suffer Well postdoctoral fellow at UCI. That was last year, I believe, or that was
Yes.
before the pandemic. So, so I just wanted to welcome you to our workshop today and thank you for leading us.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here and see familiar faces. I had a wonderful time at UCI, and it was last year. Time seems to have no meaning anymore, but that was a year ago. And I'm not too far down the road now in LA County. So thank you, Sujin, so much for arranging this and Amanda Swain. Also, I know that this presentation was kind of your idea. So I want to thank the two of you for putting this together and hosting me. So when Amanda originally approached me to offer this workshop, it was after I had given a talk and had done some accessibility features in giving my talk at UCI, and she had asked if I wanted to lead a workshop helping other people think through the accessibility contours of giving a talk. This was before the pandemic, so we originally conceived of it as if you're giving a talk or you're giving a presentation or you're working with other people, how can you make your work a little bit more accessible and a little bit more disability friendly? And then the pandemic happened. And so Sujin and I have tried to fold in a little bit of content related to doing this kind of presentation work virtually, which is all a work in progress for all of us. So I have envisioned this workshop as a little bit part resource sharing and part discussion and just open conversation, because I probably won't have anticipated some of the challenges that all of you have faced. But really what I want to do is just foster a conversation about how to create access and how to make more accessible spaces in higher education, whether that is in person or virtually. I want to say, I know that this is, we're in a unique time, so feel free to use this space in whatever way works for you. If you need to stay off camera, that's fine. But if you would like to join us on camera, that's fine too. Feel free to leave and come back. Stand up, stretch. I feel like this is one of the benefits of being online and at home, is that you can stretch and walk around and go get a cup of coffee and still listen, and that's fine. And please make your body mind as comfortable as it can be in this moment. Can everybody hear me okay? Awesome, great. And I know Sujin already mentioned this, but feel free to turn on closed captioning. We've enabled it on our end, so you should be able to click in the bottom bar, the live transcript button, and get a closed caption if you would like that. For accessibility purposes, it's highly imperfect, it's auto-generated, but it's a little something, so feel free to enable that. So I first I'll ask everybody to introduce themselves a little bit. Then I've got a handout with some resources on it that I can share with you all, and then I will open it up for discussion. So the first thing that I'll ask us all to do is just to introduce who we are and what brought us to this workshop today. So I'm Sarah Orem. I teach in the writing program at USC. I work in disability studies, and I come at that from a mental health background. I work with a lot of OCD support groups, and I have OCD myself, so it's access is a very personal project for me. So I think a lot about in my own work how to make higher ed more friendly for people with mental illnesses and disabilities. So I'm just going to go across the screen here. So Sujin, you are at my top left. So if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi again, everyone. I'm Sujin Ko. I'm the Graduate Futures Program Director at the Humanities Center. I am trying to do my best to be an ally for those with disabilities. I try to, I'm learning about how to, I think, create accessible publicity, flyers. I'm learning more about how to be attentive to, you know, a whole range of people's needs. And so I try to create welcoming spaces wherever I am. So this is something, but I would like some, I guess, more concrete guidance as to how to do that.
Yeah. Amanda?
Hi, I'm Amanda Swain, and I co-direct the Humanities Center in the School of Humanities. And I really wanted Sarah to do this workshop for us because when she was at UCI as the Sawyer Seminar postdoctoral scholar, she gave a talk, and I was amazed at the way she would describe the images in her slides just so naturally as part of giving her talk. And I realized that if someone had a visual impairment, they would know that what the image was and how it related to the content that she was talking about and still get that impact even without seeing the image, like those of us who could see the image. And it just like, she just did it. And it was so natural and didn't feel like it was like, and now I will tell you what the image looked like. And it just floored me. And I realized, oh, that's what it means to give a presentation using slides that is accessible to everyone, whether they can see the slide or not. And so that it both impressed me with her ease at doing that and made me want to be able to develop that kind of capacity. That's
Amanda, I'm very flattered at 11 a.m. on a Friday morning. Next, I see Samuel, who I have met before because we met through a trivia team function organized by the UCI postdoc organization. So would you mind going next, Sam?
Absolutely not. Hi, everyone. I'm Samuel Mahanes. I'm a fourth-year PhD student in ecology and evolutionary biology. Like Sarah said, we met through trivia and have kept in touch during the pandemic. I will say trivia has been one of the big like blocks in my like weekly life that I always look forward to. But whenever I see her virtually at trivia, I try to ask her what she's doing, and I'm always really curious to see what she's doing professionally. So I was looking forward to this as to kind of see Sarah in action.
Aww.
Also, I TA just about every quarter here at UCI. And so as a TA, I'm always looking for ways to kind of make the classroom more inclusive, make students more comfortable. And I think that's particularly important during a time of remote learning where everyone has this kind of like frictional discomfort. Nobody, like it's much more difficult to really develop a rapport with your students. So I think this is a particularly good time for this.
Next, I see Audrey.
Hi, I'm not going to turn on my camera just because I'm in a very messy room, but I work on the communications team for the School of Humanities at UCI. And one of the reasons why I was interested in joining this presentation is that a huge goal for our team is to make all of our communications, whether it's online flyers, emails, or social media, accessible to everyone else.
That's great. Yes, and feel free to leave cameras off or on as it works for you. I know that this is a weird time we're in, so there's absolutely no pressure. Next, I see Trevor, who I've also met on campus through a friend, so I have friendly faces here.
Hi, I'm Trevor Day. As Sarah mentioned, I'm a personal friend of Sarah's, but I also work as a network engineer here within OIT at UCI. So just interested to see, tools and techniques when, possibly presenting to kind of a wider audience within OIT on various topics.
Next I see Asako.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Asako Katsura. I'm a third-year PhD student of Visual Studies program. I'm working as a TA, and being an international student myself, I want to be more careful. I have many international students in my classroom too. So I want to be more careful that students have different needs, not just international students. So yeah, after working as a TA for 2 years, there are still so much to learn. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity. Thank you so much for your time.
Great. Then another friendly face, Judy.
Hi, sorry, I'm eating lunch. So I'm gonna have the camera
Please
off.
eat. Please eat.
I'm a professor in Asian American Studies, and I co-direct the Humanities Center with Amanda. She has just raved about your presentation, so I'm here to learn.
I hope I can live up. And then Adria.
Hi, Sarah and everyone. I'm a professor of history. I also teach in the medical humanities undergraduate and graduate program, and I also teach units in disability history. I've learned so much about from disability studies scholars and activists about how to implement better practices. I won't say best practices, but better practices during the pivot to remote learning. And I'm looking forward to learning more from your resources as well. I have to turn off the camera because I realize that, I mean, in the age of Zoom, I get horrible migraines and nausea from looking at small screens. So that's like another kind of accessibility struggle of mine. And when I teach long seminars, I wonder how students themselves manage if instructors require videos to be on at all times.
Yeah,
So.
it presented a whole host of like additional complications. And I'm always interested to hear about these new, in some ways, like it's become more accessible because, you know, you can take a class from wherever, but then, you know, I'm finding myself battling fatigue a lot more. And our body minds have, I continue to use this phrase body minds. I'm just going to step back and say, I've used this phrase body minds a couple of times, and that's a disability studies term that refers to the ways that our bodies and our minds are interconnected with each other. And that bodily and mental disability and bodily and mental life are often very interconnected. So our body minds are adjusting to this new world in uneven ways. So I'm glad to hear about, I'm also eager to hear about the things impacting all of you. Colette.
Hi. Can we sorry, I was like doing something just now. Can you repeat what we were doing again?
Oh, just who you are and what brings you in.
Okay, yeah. So my name is Colette. I'm a fourth year journalism and film and media studies major, and I just wanted to come today because I'm like a marketing intern for School of Humanities, so I wanted to come here and see the presentation on accessibility since my mentor, Audrey, is one of my mentors, and she told me to come out today. So
next is Martin.
Unmute. Hello. I can turn my camera on. So I'm a postdoc in the Institute for Immunology here at UCI. And I'm like Sam, I met Sarah when she was here, and we sort of know each other through trivia, as that's sort of like an outlet to, I don't know, or just an excuse to meet with friends and you know, see people over Zoom now. But I'm also interested professionally. I'm a third or fourth year postdoc now, doing a molecular biology, and I'm just really interested in presenting my research and presenting information and how to make that as clear as possible and reach the most number of people possible. So, and actually something Amanda said about conveying visual information. A lot of my work and a lot of my graduate work was microscopic images or visual diagrams, and I'd love to learn and get more information about how to reach more people.
And then last but not least, we have Shane.
Hi, I'm Shane. I'm a grad student in our system science department. And I guess I'm just interested in being a better ally, especially as I teach and do outreach. I'm also a grad student representative for the department, so I'm interested in taking back anything I learn and sharing it with the rest of the group. So thanks for doing this.
Awesome. Well, it's lovely to meet all of you and see some familiar faces. I miss being at UCI so much. Sujin shared some great information in the chat about coping with fatigue. So feel free to use the chat function to ask questions or share resources. One of the things that I've continually learned in my work in disability studies is that we learn from each other all the time, and I'm always learning from my friends and my colleagues. So feel free to ask questions or resource share. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've got a handout with some resources for you all. It's also linked on my website, so I'll drop that here. And I'm going to drop the PDFs. I've got one. Oh, sorry. I upgraded my software on my computer last night, and so everything is just like a little different. There it is. Okay. And now I have two screens, so everything gets lost. So there is. Why isn't that uploading? Sujin, do you
I think I gave you co-host ability, so you should be able to share PDFs.
Because usually I can just drop documents right into the chat bar and they'll upload, but they're not.
Okay. Let me see. I'm pretty sure
that is interesting.
Allowed. Just check really quickly.
There are various kinds of security settings at the OIT level.
You know what? I'm going to now file transfer. Okay, let me see if I can do that. Are you able to now, or?
Give it a try. No, it's.
Sorry.
Well, I can just share my screen and go over it. And then for those who would like to download it, you can go to my website. Or can I like? It's thinking. There we go. Okay. Oh, now I can. Wait. This is a great instructive moment. The wonderful disability activist, Leah Lakshmi Piepsana Samarasinha, says that you'll be doing disability justice right when everything goes wrong and the elevator breaks and the lift is blocked and somebody has a panic attack and nothing goes according to plan, but you try your best to make sure that everybody gets to be included. So that is this is an instructive learning moment in disability justice. Okay, well, I'm just going to share my screen instead of trying.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, can everybody see this? So imagine that I have seamlessly dropped this this file onto your computers and you are looking at it yourselves. So I wanted to open up by giving you the framework that I am guided by when I do my work, both my research and my teaching, and my work in disability communities and also out into the regular world. So disability scholarship and disability activism is guided by a principle called universal design, which in short just means removing as many barriers as possible so that as many people can be included in a space as possible. And so Ron Mace, who runs a disability design center, defines universal design as the design of products and environments to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation or specialized design. The Design for All Foundation gives another definition of what universal design is. They define it as the intervention on environments, products, and services with the aim that everyone, including future generations, regardless of age, gender, capabilities, or cultural background, can enjoy participating in the construction of our society while also being able to access, use, and understand whatever part of the environment with as much independence as possible. So this is the principle that guides me when I am giving talks or teaching courses. It can look a lot of different ways. You'll notice there aren't like specific recommendations in these guidelines because universal access looks different for everybody. And it looks different in a lot of different situations. But generally a good rule of thumb is that when we remove barriers for disabled people, we end up making spaces more accessible for everybody. So I'm thinking about curb cuts, excuse me, on sidewalks. So curb cuts, oh, Holly, oh my gosh. Holly was another postdoc at UCI, but she is now an assistant professor at the University of New Mexico. And we were both in humanities. Hi, Holly, it's lovely to see you virtually. So yes, so curb cuts are a great example of universal design in action because curb cuts that like provide a ramp up onto a sidewalk. They help people in wheelchairs navigate city spaces, but they also make the city more accessible for mothers with strollers or delivery people who have dollies or any number of other people. So when we remove barriers for disabled people, we end up creating more access for any number of people we might not have originally anticipated. So that's the general principle that guides the work that I do. But I've got some, in terms of like giving presentations, I've got some specific things that I do. And that is sort of commonplace nowadays in disability studies, and it's starting to filter out into other fields. So one thing that I always do when I'm giving a presentation is give an access statement. And I gave a very abbreviated one at the beginning of this workshop, but I try to do it anytime I'm giving a presentation. So here is I've included my access statement here on this worksheet handout. It's not a worksheet. You don't have to do work or homework. I always say, in the spirit of creating an accessible academic space, I want to recognize that there are multiple ways to inhabit the room we are currently occupying. Please use the space in whatever way is accessible for you. You may want to move around, stand up, go out and come back in, stim, knit, stretch, or take notes. When we're in academic spaces, very often we are expected to comport ourselves in a specific way. So we think we need to like sit up straight, not fidget, not go out and come back in. And very often that's hard on our body minds. Somebody on the autism spectrum might need to stim. People might need to get up and go to the restroom and come back. People who have chronic pain might need to get up and stretch. And so just removing some of the pressure of the very formal expectations of inhabiting academic spaces can make spaces more accessible for a wider array of people. And I do this when I'm teaching too. Some days, like when I sometimes when I've started a new class at the beginning of the semester, I'll ask all of my students to like get up and find a new spot that's comfortable for them, whether that is sitting on the floor or leaning up against a wall, and just to practice inhabiting the room in a way they might not have thought that they could, but that is more comfortable for them. Typically when we're in an academic space, we feel like we have to sit facing the front with our back straight. We can't move around, we can't leave. So just sort of pushing back against that expectation to hold ourselves in this really rigorous and often constrained manner can make things more friendly for more people. I also then offer trigger warnings. So I'll say, I also want to offer what's known in some communities as a trigger warning or a content warning. In this presentation, I will be referencing topics including, and then I'll give examples. Some common triggers are rape, suicide, violence, images depicting gore or blood. You don't necessarily need to anticipate every trigger, but just doing your best to give some general heads ups for triggering topics is a good rule of thumb. Then you'll notice that I offer access copies. So I say, if you need an access copy of my presentation, you can find a typed transcript in both 12 and 18-point font on my website. And so I shared all of that with you. Typically, if I'm doing an in-person talk, I will bring, so like if I go to a conference, I will bring printed access copies with me. Usually, like if I go to a conference, I'll bring like 4 12-point copies printed out of my talk, and then like 2 18-point copies of the talk printed out. And I do that because having like a typed transcript to follow along with can help people with like learning or processing disorders, or people with visibility, or even like audio impairments, just so people can have multiple means of engagement. Oh, sorry, I skipped over. Oh no, I didn't skip over this. So my access statement is adapted from one by the wonderful disability scholar, Margaret Price, and I've linked her website here on the handout. And you should feel free to copy that link. Again, it's linked, the handout is on my website. She offers a much more robust and large access statement whenever she gives a talk. So feel free to think about what kind of access statement might work for you. This is the one that I often do. It's pretty short and pretty abbreviated, but there are lots of ways to do that. So yeah. So I've already covered trigger warnings a little bit. So I like to offer trigger warnings at the beginning of my talk. I've given some examples of common triggers here. So self-harm, rape, sexual assault, racism, suicide, violence, child harm, gun violence, and gore. I didn't give any at the beginning of this presentation because I don't necessarily anticipate doing that, but I think the work of giving trigger warnings is something that we already do kind of implicitly in an informal way. I remember being a graduate student in a seminar on African-American literature, and we were poised to do a day on slave narratives, and the professor said, everybody just like heads up, it's pretty graphic, just so you know going into this. Slave narratives contain some pretty brutal depictions of violence, and I don't think that was intentionally, I don't think the professor thought of that as a trigger warning, but the kind of work of letting people know in advance, hey, this is really graphic or this is really brutal, is something we already do and actually creates more access for people with mental illnesses, perhaps who have PTSD, or a variety of mental health diagnoses. So Amanda mentioned at the beginning of this that when she attended a talk that I gave, that I did image descriptions. And image descriptions are so key for people with visual impairments. And they don't have to be long or intensive in any way, but just giving like a brief description of what you're looking at can be really helpful for people in your audience who have low vision. Blindness itself is on a spectrum, so some people might have low vision, some people might be completely blind. It really depends, and you never know. And so it's good to build these things into your talk just in case somebody is in the audience, and it can be really simple. So I've pulled an image description that I included in the talk that Amanda gave, actually. So I was giving a talk about the writer and performance artist Terry Galloway, and I included an image of a hospital that she had been in, Gracie Square Hospital, and the cover image was of the PowerPoint presentation I was giving was of this hospital that she had been in. And so when I began my talk, I introduced myself, I gave my access statement, and I said, after that, the image on the cover slide is the exterior of a building on a tree-lined street. The building's gray awnings read Gracie Square Hospital. And often if I'm giving a talk, I will have my, my speech printed out, and I'll include my image descriptions in the text of my talk so that as I am going along, I can just read them out. They don't have to be long, they don't have to be involved, but just giving people a little bit of a sense of what's going on visually can increase access a lot. I've also attended talks where people crowdsource the image descriptions. There's a wonderful disability scholar named Petra Kuppers. And when she was giving a talk at a theater conference that I was attending, she asked the audience to describe the images on the screen she was giving, because they were kind of, they were very ambiguous and abstract, and multiple people could have given widely different descriptions of an image because they were so, they weren't like pictures, they were just like these sort of images of like bubbles underwater kind of, but that had been abstracted in this kind of very artistic way. So she asked for just like a minute for people to like describe the images that we were seeing. I've also included a link to closed captioning. That is one benefit of the pandemic and Zoom learning, is that all of the talks that I'm giving now, if they're online, all of the teaching that I'm doing, I can include closed captioning very easily. It's again not perfect, it's audio generated or auto generated, but that is one way that the pandemic has forced us to become more accessible. So in a lot of ways, online learning and online conferencing has brought accessibility measures that disability advocates have been fighting for a long time. So universal design is often about providing multiple means of engagement with something. So like if I'm giving a talk, people can listen to me, but I also want to provide the printed off copies of my talk so that people have a choice for how they engage with what I'm saying. And so people have like a variety of options, and they can engage with my content in whatever way works best for them. And people had been pushing for like virtual or remote access. So I went to a disability activism conference in Boston, and they had enabled people to be able to use like telepresence robots to attend the conference virtually. So I saw these little telepresence robots like zipping around the conference hallways, so people could join the conference from their hospital room or their bed or their home. And so that conference had enabled like live streaming in addition to in-person learning, because people with disabilities sometimes might struggle to, if you have a high pain day, get out of bed or access a physical space. The built environment that we have around us is not always terribly accessible. And so in some ways, Zoom learning has made things more accessible, because now, if before you would have struggled to get into a physical space, now you can do it just with the click of a button, assuming that you have a computer and reliable internet access, and you can get closed captioning very easily. So I've created a little section here on the handout about how to turn on captioning. There's also an information here at this link about more reliable closed captioning, because there are services you can pay for that will that UCI has to enable more robust closed captioning. So I've got a few other considerations. So I already mentioned Access Copies offering a range of hard copy versions of whatever talk you're giving, both in regular 12-point Times New Roman font, and then one in large print. One thing I will say, a key thing if you're ever giving a talk if and when we return to the real world and giving presentations in person, is using a mic whenever possible. I know I've gone to conferences before and people have said, I'm not going to use the mic because I can project, because they feel like the mic is a little bit artificial. And I get that impulse, I definitely do, but use the mic whenever possible. A microphone projects your voice in ways that you never can just on your own. So deaf and hard of hearing people, or people who are low hearing, will have a hard time picking up on what you're saying if you don't use a mic. So use that mic whenever possible. Oh, sorry, I'm seeing. Yes, as Amanda said, yeah, the space doesn't always have good acoustics, exactly. Yeah, so the mic is key. And then I've got information here on providing closed captioning through Zoom. So those are just some things that I think about when I'm giving a presentation or teaching a class. Providing multiple copies of things, providing multiple means of engagement, and just trying to lower barriers so that more people can participate. So I'm going to stop sharing now. So we have like a little more than 15 minutes left. So what I was going to do now is put people into breakout rooms and ask us to just like talk with each other about, oh yeah, Amanda.
Before we do that, I have a general question. Johanna Drucker gave a talk a few weeks ago for us for our Digital Humanities Exchange on sort of ethical data visualization. So not surprisingly, she had a lot of slides with images of data visualization. But I noticed very distinctly that slides that did not have a data visualization image were white with black text. Very, very simple. Just a few short like keywords that she wanted people to, key phrases, key ideas. But it was just white with black text, very simple. And I thought, that's interesting. And then like a week later, I was watching another talk, and I can't remember who the second talk was by, but that person also, the slides were with any text were white with black text. And I wondered if that was, if that's an accessibility design. I remember being told when PowerPoint, showing PowerPoint slides first came about, was to use a dark background with white text because it was easier to view up on a screen. And it just really struck me that they were doing white with black text, very simple, as if it were a printed page. And I was wondering if
there are people who have thought about the accessibility of various fonts and colors. Usually you want to have high contrast. So you don't want your background and the text to be too close to each other. So whether it's very dark background with light text or white background with black text, you want to have as high contrast as possible. But I can definitely do some Googling. I try to do white with black text and simple large print text, just so that people who might be low vision can read easily. But I know there are specific guidelines related to like which fonts and which colors are more accessible. And so I can Google that and send that out to you. Yeah, Adriana, you had a question?
Hi, I don't know. I wanted to ask the whole group and you in particular, and I really appreciated what you had to say about sort of more straightforward image descriptions, but I'm wondering, I'm seeing more and more image descriptions of human figuration, right, of people that raise questions for me about the kind of interpretive categorization, right, that is often involved in translating someone's perception of who or what this person's identity is. So for instance, a light-skinned Black man, right, or a queer Native American cisgendered person, right? This is a mixed race Korean American woman. But why do we necessarily assume that description created by X person would be the same way that I would see that person's, right? So I'm just wondering what you think about that practice. It raises a lot of questions about, kind of the interpretive work that goes into it. It's not a straightforward process.
No, and that's why I think what Petra Kuppers did in that presentation where she had the audience give image descriptions was so wonderful, because she recognized how different people's interpretations can be. If I know like the gender or racial identity of a person who I'm describing in an image description, I'll give that like, this is a white person, or this is a light-skinned African-American person, or something like that. And it's always it's not going to be perfect. But it's simply, I think, it's about trying to do your best to just like give a general description. If you don't know the identity of like the person you're describing, you can say this is like a female presenting person, or a feminine looking person, a person with light skin, a person who appears to be of Asian descent. So just doing your best to capture what you're seeing and translate that to somebody else. But that work of translation and interpretation, that's why like sign language interpreters are called interpreters, because they are translating something from one medium to another, and the image descriptions are interpretive themselves. And it's never going to be one-to-one. So making a good faith effort, but you raise a really interesting and important question of how do we do that? Yeah. Are there other questions people have?
Hi, Sarah. I'm not sure if this is something you would know, because I know this is a very social media specific question, but one thing that we've started doing is on each image description, we'll write in the caption a short description. My boss and I have been debating, is it useful writing out what they're wearing? Because we're kind of leaning towards it's like, we don't want the caption to be so long that if someone's using a screen reader, it gets boring. So I'm kind of leaning towards only describing the clothing if it's relevant, like a picture of someone skiing, but I wasn't sure if you had any opinions.
Well, I mean, let me open it up to the group, because I mean, I had thought I was going to put us in breakout rooms so we could talk about accessibility challenges or questions we had, but it seems like we're just having that debate now. I mean, I have my opinions, but I would love to hear from others. Like, how would you approach that? Audrey, you said you had only been describing the clothing like when it was relevant.
Yeah, one of the reasons why we stuck to only describing the clothes when it's relevant is just because I saw certain accessible presentations and recommendations to try to keep the alt text under 150 characters. So I don't want to write like a whole paragraph about what the person's wearing and have someone get bored. And also if it's not relevant to the image or what we're trying to convey, but I just want to make sure that that was right, because I don't want someone to be like, oh, you left out all these details.
I mean, there's the cliche, a picture is worth 1,000 words. You know, if I put up an image on the screen and asked all of you to describe it, you'd probably all describe it differently, and in great detail. And there's no way you're going to capture everything. It's just not possible. Or maybe it is possible, but then you'd spend the entire presentation describing the image. So, I mean, I think trying to capture the most, because you've only got, you know, I think keeping alt text short is really important. So like alt text is the embedded like description of an image. Somebody with a more of a tech background might be able to describe what alt text is in better terms than I am. So it's good to keep alt text short. Like if I don't know, if I was writing a description of an image and the outfit they were wearing was like important, like if they had something written on a t-shirt, or if it was like super crucial to like why I brought in that image, I probably would describe it. But if I had brought in that image for other reasons, I might not describe it. I don't know that there is like hard and fast rules about what you include and what you exclude. It's like, it's a judgment call, which is, I mean, that's kind of what I said to Adria, like, it's a judgment call and it's highly imperfect. I mean, maybe it is good that I brought up the Leah Lakshmi Piepson SMRS and Habit about like failure and struggle early on, because like you got to do your best and things aren't going to be perfect. And making peace with that and just kind of like putting in a good faith effort, I feel like is a great rule of thumb for all disability inclusion work. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear about other challenges or questions people had related to access, whether giving a presentation or teaching or something else altogether.
I do think, Audrey, that relates to the presentation also. Like you could spend a lot of time describing the, sorry, all of a sudden my screen popped up an alert and you all disappeared from my screen. You could spend a lot of time during a presentation describing in detail every image up on the screen. And in some cases, if it is a scientific thing, who was it, Martin, I think, you know, or, you know, if you're trying to show some kind of scientific thing, you might need to do some more detailed description. But, you know, if the image is designed to be kind of evocative, or representative, or then I don't think you necessarily have to describe every single detail. And something like clothing, you know, I think about like when I look at the humanities social media of students, you know, I'm looking at the face of the student, and I'm only really looking at the clothes if it seems like the clothing is somehow speaking to why they're being featured, rather than just that particular student happens to be wearing a UCI t-shirt or a, you know, a red sweater, or, and so I think it would be the same if I were describing an image that I had on the screen as part of a talk. You know, I think about like that image of that you said, you know, it's a tree-lined street with the Gracie Hospital. Like you didn't go into detail, like there's 4 cars parked outside, or, you know, it's a cloudy day or whatever. Like the important part was that this is an image of this particular hospital, and this is what we see of it. We see it's on a tree-lined street and there's an awning and here's the name, so that it's evocative of this place that you're then going to talk about this woman being in this hospital at a later point. Because Adriana, a lot of times that's what images are doing for us. They're evoking something as we're giving the talk.
Adria asked in the chat about spelling out names and proper nouns. And I've never seen that done in terms of like disability access, but I'm not, I mean, it could be. I guess I'm wondering, can you say more, Adria, about what you would
Yeah, I've
to
seen it
accomplish?
done quite a bit in disability oriented conferences.
Okay.
So if you're saying the scholar, you know, blah, blah, blah is, you know, said this, and then you spell out, you know, THATCHER, you know. And particularly because I work in a non-English research language and use a lot of those terms and names that might be a little bit more difficult for people who are less familiar, I do take the time to spell it out.
Yeah, especially if there are like if there are sign language interpreters present who might need to spell out, because like names are generally spelled out in sign language in ASL, letter by letter. So that might be, it's a really great point for if you're in a primarily English speaking space and you're using like something that might be unfamiliar to people doing the interpreting or who are in the audience. I could see that definitely. I'm gonna have to start thinking about doing that in my own work now. I'm reading Amanda's caption right now. Yeah, audio captions are really, really bad at capturing proper nouns. Oh, Amanda raises a good point about scientific terms and spelling those out. That could make sense. Although perhaps if you're at a science conference, people might generally be familiar with those terms. I don't know if there are particular questions that our science folks have that I can try to address. I know Martin asked about like what it would look like to do image descriptions for, some that are for public audiences, yeah. But yeah, Martin asked about like what it would be like to give image descriptions for like a diagram or a table with a bunch of scientific information. So yeah, I don't know if, was that still a question, Martin, or?
I mean, it's a constant thing for me. You know, yeah, like you said, it's you do your best, you try, and actually, I think you get feedback from people, and if they say, "Oh, I liked what you did here," or "This could have been better," and you work on that for the next time. So I don't, for some of the scientific descriptions, it's like because it can get technical, but in terms of I mean, a lot of this is relevant if you show a picture of people or show a diagram of a thing. I mean, you're showing that for a reason, and you're trying to convey something. So you want to, in your text or in your any sort of alternate description, just be able to convey that clearly. So convey the relevant. Describe the relevant parts of that image or diagram or whatever it is. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's this has really been interesting and helpful. So thank you.
Yeah. I think obviously most of the recommendations that I gave are relevant to the humanities because that's the field that I work in. So I would be interested to hear more about how this gets adapted into different kinds of work. But I want to be mindful of time because I know we're all busy and maybe just need a nap because resting is another key important part about disability life. Adria asked if I collect printed access copies. It depends on what I'm talking about and what kind of text it is. Like if it's something that is still a manuscript, and I am like still working on it, or I feel like tenderly about it, I might say or print at the top, like access copy, do not distribute, or for use in conference only, please return at the end. You know, there is the possibility that somebody might run away with it, but usually people are pretty good about it. Whereas if it's something like, if I'm giving a talk adapted from something I've published already, I don't really care. So I think it depends on your preferences and how you feel about that content being made public. Yeah. Oh, great. Thank you, Shane, for sharing that. Yeah, colorblind friendly display options. Those are super helpful. Yeah, there's a whole wealth of information on the internet about that I am less familiar with because I'm such a Luddite. So I usually do like black text on white screens. Generally, I know a rule of thumb is that serif fonts are more helpful in print, whereas sans serif are more accessible on the web and in like virtual displays. That's sort of general rule of thumb that I've heard. But yeah, I know we all are incredibly busy and have things to do or pets to walk or naps to take. And thank you all for coming, and feel free to reach out to me. My email is here. So I'm happy to answer questions or continue this dialogue. So I hope you've learned a little bit today.
Yes, thank you so much, Sarah. And I really appreciate the crowdsourcing spirit that is evident in the chat. So this, again, the session has been recorded in case you want to revisit it, and I'll be sending out the link to that as well. But thank you for taking the time to just talk about how to make presentations more accessible. There are so many questions that I still have, but hopefully this is an ongoing conversation for all of us. So thank you again. And thank you to all who came to be with us today.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Bye.
Bye.